Welcome back. In the eternal pursuit of just one more upgrade, no, please, really, I mean it, I promise, for real this time, we find ourselves on the edge of an active volcanic caldera after narrowly escaping angry tribal raid number 274, Zerg Monkey Edition. As near as I can tell, our goal here is to secure and disable 3 transmitters around the map in order to expose a mech relay that I can then hack to get a grav core from the area. Now, I'm not normally one to jinx my own operations, but this seems pretty simple. Like, suspiciously simple. The mech pods are all sleeping, somehow, despite me landing a ship next to them not an hour ago, and we have some chunk and charge rifle damage, so if this is really all there is to it, I expect it to be a clean sweep. Turns out, yes, it is exactly that. Hacking all 3 stabilizers crashes the doohickey, and when it crashes, a bunch of mechs come in to defend, but there aren't any scythers or centipedes in the reinforcements, so they get shredded in about 2 seconds flat. I've started coming around on that legendary LMG of Goose's as well. The EMP effect may be annoying at times, but an LMG with a legendary quality can one-shot a Lancer pretty reliably if all 5 of the shots hit, and that is a lot of damage to be putting out every 3.5 seconds. I have no reason to rush, so I opt to stick around for a bit and watch the volcano do its thing. There was an event earlier causing it to produce a lava flow that I've been watching, and just now there was an eruption that sprayed a bunch of temporary lava tiles all over the map. This is actually a thing with bodies of water now, too. Odyssey introduced a bunch of events related to flooding and hydrodynamics that will create temporary water tiles. It's pretty neat. I was hoping to get some obsidian from cleaning up the lava puddle, but once it solidified it just turned into a floor tile that I didn't get anything from destructing, so pooey. There are map tiles that mention having obsidian deposits that I want to check out at some point, but I got a quest for another scanning mission to get a fuel optimizer, so I want to grab that first. It seems like these scanner missions always take place in interesting spots, Rimworld-wise, and this one is no exception since it drops me down on a densely forested tile with an abandoned colony on it. I did a bit of quick poking around, and there wasn't anything too interesting inside. It was basically just a carbon copy base template from a tribal faction base assault mission in the base game with more farms than usual, but still, it's neat. This little jaunt into the forest proves to be an excellent chance to rest and resupply. I'm left to my own devices for the first time in 8 days, which lets me sow and harvest a very healthy plot of rice, gather a ton of wood to restock my chem fuel reserves, and do a spot of hunting to build up my larder. And then a spot of trading to offload all the stupid dusters that I keep making out of the animals I'm butchering. Randy is even kind enough to send in a swarm of manhunting wargs, which are harmless to me because doors, right as the raid on the scanner pops, so I don't even have to lift a finger to defend it and can simply sit back, pop my feet up, and let the dogs out to play. As if that wasn't enough, I'm even given an opportunity to capture and hopefully recruit another pawn named Ashton, who is an absurdly stacked, tough, body-modding teetotaler with a double fire passion and level 14 skill in shooting, and other passions in animals, cooking, and melee. While we're recruiting Ashton, I have Goose fly us over to one of the lava fields with obsidian deposits that I wanted to check out earlier. Obsidian is a new material. Duh. That has a couple of interesting properties and a high beauty stat modifier, but more than anything, I want to try and use it to create a masterwork or legendary class greatsword for brick. The stuff has a 140% sharp damage modifier, which is 20% higher than plasteel, and my thinking is that, plus a good roll, should let me do some absolutely brutal things with his melee build, especially when it comes to taking out low HP, high armor targets like pawns in marine armor. In doing this, I discovered that, unlike what I was expecting, which was obsidian chunks that you had to carve into bricks, obsidian is an ore that is mined in veins about the same size as a steel vein. In retrospect, this makes sense because there isn't a bill option to cut obsidian chunks on the stone cutting table, but it was a bit of a shock for some reason. Naturally, the tribals took objection to my desire to do anything unmolested and throw a bunch of fresh meat at me to make that objection known. This was a pretty rough raid for me, in so much as I had to actually, fight it, because I wanted to finish mining out all the obsidian, and I couldn't bail. Of course, by rough, I mean rough for Brick, who's my dedicated door holder and has had the daylights beaten out of him so many times it's a wonder the sun is still shining. But other than that, and some expendable walls, everything went fine. And speaking of things going fine, welcome back to the colony Gammaholic. Your new avatar is our amazing soldier Ashton from earlier, and now that you don't have a pawn that's absolutely flipping psychotic, I have high hopes for you. We will politely ignore the fact that our brand new super soldier is 14, which is the second time this has happened on this run, now that I think about it. In my defense, I would like to raise the point that if you're old enough to hold a gun, you aren't a child, and therefore there is no such thing as a child soldier on the Rim. Meanwhile, the tribals are once again attempting to apply the monkeys with typewriter solution to successful raid enactment, but in doing so forgot that before successfully writing the complete works of Shakespeare, or in this case doing literally any damage other than minor bruising, they are going to produce several million failures. And that this was one of them. Congratulations, you have mildly inconvenienced me. Are you happy yet? All I wanted to do was collect rocks, people. I don't know how to explain this any more clearly, but to reiterate, your existence is irrelevant to me, and this weird rivalry we have is extremely sad, extremely one-sided, and extremely a you problem sort of deal that's not going to be improved in any way by me using your social reject squads for target practice every 10 minutes. Still, I may not be all that in a bag of wet rats socially, but I do know when I'm not wanted, so once I grab the rest of my obsidian, I ship off to yet another scanner protection mission to grab my second pilot core upgrade and loot a nearby chem fuel stockpile. Right after I land, Shai produces her first masterwork obsidian sword, and let me tell you, the stats on that sucker made all the trouble to get the obsidian worth it. This thing is nasty. 70% armor negation on a slash or stab attack is almost enough to entirely negate a centipede's 72% sharp armor rating, and at almost 47 damage per bladed attack, the thing will easily one-shot any humanoid and almost any mech body part in the game if the attack lands. In my other run, I made a big deal about getting one of my pawns a mono sword to do basically what this is doing, but this is just straight up better in every respect, and I am desperately interested in seeing what it can do. The ancient chemfuel depot proves to be exactly what it says on a tin. It's a depot with a bunch of old rooms and a treasure room with about 1,000 chemfuel in it, and also old. Like most of the other structures I've raided, it's nothing special, and I can make all the stuff that I find in it faster than I can steal in it anyway, but I can't farm in the desert, so it was nice to have something to do while I was waiting on the transmitter to finish. For the next couple of months, I take it easy. I parked myself down in a nice forest area with a bunch of animals and plant life, and have done a ridiculous amount of stocking up on food, to the point that my entire colony is now eating lavish meals simply because I had so many raw calories to spare that it didn't make sense to only make fine ones. I also did some internal rearrangement to give them a properly nice recreation and dining area, upgraded my kitchen freezer to a heat-deleting setup that should make food stockpiles functionally immune to interruption in cooling that you normally see during solar flares, and was going to get a better workroom and hospital space built up before some mechs intervened and set up a droner in the area. And so, with the cruel reminder that we all live on the Rim and can't have nice things, my colony departs to investigate rumors of another custom weapon hidden in the mountains to the northeast, content in the knowledge that of the many trials presented by the Rim, most can be solved by running away. As before, the so-called elite forces of the Rim are very much not elite, and the single largest challenge of the entire engagement is trying to convince my pawns to not wipe out everyone in their line of sight so that poor Brick could have a fair melee fight with his fancy new sword. We did not succeed in this endeavor, but even so, I can now confirm that Brick is now a limb-lopping lawnmower of a combatant. It's kind of ridiculous, and I kind of want to recruit a couple more good melee pawns so I can have 3 of these people holding a door just to see the carnage that ensues. I also take back everything I ever said about miniguns and weapon mods being weak, because holy mother of Mary is the one we got ridiculous. The customizations are built on top of a default masterwork quality minigun, which, you know, not terrible. It's not great on its own necessarily, but it's definitely not terrible, even taking into account the debuff that it gets from being a minigun. However, it turns out that when you mod a minigun so its bursts happen twice as fast and contain 50% more bullets, you go from pretty okay to, okay boss, I made a fire hose out of lead, tell me where you want to point it. To be fair, Gamu has 2 Archotech eyes and a level 15 shooting skill, so this is really the extreme upper end of how well it's going to perform, but still, this weapon melted a test centipede in 4 bursts, which is ridiculous when you consider that normally miniguns perform poorly against centipedes because of their lack of armor penetration. We are absolutely going to be looking for more of these, because good heavens above, this thing is broken. So that was fun. Let's put it to the test, shall we? My next grab core is located inside a giant cave system that is itself located in the shrubland area that I've been hopping around for most of the series. Because it's a cave and we can't have nice things, said cave is, of course, absolutely dripping with insects. For anyone else, this might present a problem. For Gamuholic, however, this is merely a convenient excuse to show off their fully functional TF2 cosplay in an exotic location. An exotic location that very quickly runs out of bugs. This is supposed to be an insect lair, and functionally it's an underground dungeon featuring a whole lot of insects trapped behind some easily destructible walls. Our job is to move through it, break down the walls, clear out any bugs we find, of which there are many, and hopefully at some point locate the grav core. I mostly just find insects, and Gamu then mostly splatters those insects into a fine patina of insect paste on any available surface in about 2 seconds flat. I also find dead people. It's a surprisingly faithful reconstruction of Deep Rock Galactic, but other than that, there isn't really anything else down here. Insects aren't known for hoarding treasure or anything on the rim. They're more of an if I can't eat it, I don't care kind of hazard. I have a bit more luck on the second dive because, silly me, of course it was literally as far away from the entrance as possible. How could I possibly have forgotten the first thing I learned in Dungeon 101 class? Guarding the grav core is a very, statuesque insect called a hive queen, along with all the other usual suspects. For the record, I love this. Rimworld has needed dungeon crawling and field bosses for basically as long as caravanning has been a thing, and I am absolutely on board. That said, in this one unique instance, it's kind of a disappointing engagement for one very specific reason. As you would expect, that reason is Gamuholic, or more specifically, the lead supernova that currently identifies as a minigun. Remember that I said it was a lot less effective against centipedes because of their armor? Yeah. Hive Queens don't really have any armor, and between the not-so-minigun and all my other pawns, the poor thing hits the deck in about 10 seconds flat, with all of her minions soon to follow. This new grav core gets used to create a signal jammer, which is a passive upgrade to my ship that allows me to approach orbital stations and other areas that have active defenses by doing something to mask the gravitational flux that comes from lifting a giant steel pancake into low orbit. I don't know how it works, I just tell people to shoot bugs. This isn't strictly necessary yet, but I have had quite a handful of quests offering stuff that I want that required one, so when next one of these things fires, I will be ready. In the meantime, several recent scanning ventures have discovered a couple of asteroids that aren't quite what they seem on the surface, and I consider it both my right and my duty to go check them out. Wouldn't want people to be doing nefarious things in there, after all. A quick spot of high-stakes door hacking later determines that no, actually there aren't any people here, nefarious or otherwise, and the only thing I found was a custom-fitted masterwork bolt-action rifle. Yay. Better armor penetration seems like a nice upgrade in other contexts, but a bolt-action rifle will straight up never outperform any of my existing weapons, no matter what upgrades you stick on it, so I will have to see about selling it off later or something. The second asteroid is far more interesting. In the center, in addition to a facility of some sorts, is a new plant called an Archaean tree. These trees are a bioengineered plant that, when grown, will slowly transform the terrain surrounding them into fertile soil in a fairly generous range that's slightly larger than that of a sun lamp, and they also supposedly produce oxygen. In a nearby crate, I found a seed for one of these, so if ever I get bored of bumbling around the planet, I suppose I could make a self-sustaining space colony. Like, you know, I totally couldn't have before with reactor tech, reader reprocessing, or hydroponics, or any of the other technologies that allow you to duplicate food from basically nothing. A raid that happens soon after also finally gives Brick a chance to show off his true power, and show it off he does, by vivisecting the first attacker straight through the torso in one shot. To clarify, this isn't like a neck or an organ hit or something, Brick just straight up one-hit this guy's chest through his armor. Obsidian swords have no reason to be this overpowered. The facility itself doesn't have anything terribly interesting either, though this is the second one that I've seen that's had custom weapons in it, so if nothing else it makes orbital sites worth exploring just to farm rolls for powerful weapons. The third site I found is the one that I was really interested in exploring, and on the initial landing I can already tell you that it's going to be interesting. This is an abandoned space station, and if there isn't major loot to grab from it, I'm going to be extremely disappointed. And once we clean it out, I prove correct in my initial impressions. The thing is not heroically loaded by my standards, but there is far more stuff to grab here than there was anywhere else on the surface of the planet, as long as you're willing to do a bit of deconstruction work. Wood, steel, and components aren't really things I need, so most of it isn't useful, but I will concede if I'd hit it up earlier on in my run, I would have been a lot more interested. Unfortunately, there are no custom weapons here. I'm not sure if I didn't roll them or if they just can't spawn at all, but I guess only time will tell. At the very least, I know for certain that my next platform is going to have something useful because I have a quest telling me to go there and grab it. And yep, there we go. That is indeed a grav core. Yoink! 5 grav cores isn't enough for me, though. We're one short, and I think I know just the place to get it. As it so happens, there's a mech platform hanging out in high orbit that is selfishly hoarding one all to themselves, and I think it's time to go make them pay their taxes. As with the insect hive quest, when the map marker mentions a heavy mechanoid presence, it actually seems to mean, yeah, there's a smattering of them scattered around, so clearing out this place isn't any issue, and we locate and secure the core within a couple of days. The only real danger here is the danger I brought up with us in the form of pawns being stupid and taking off their helmet in the middle of space because it's a little scuffed up or something, and then wondering why they're suffocating, but once we correct that little feature, we loot the place to the ground and bail. With all that mess behind us, it's upgrade time again. I have Goose set us down on a world tile that claims to be rich in compacted plasteel, set up shop, and start tinkering. With 6 grav cores at my disposal, I can now build a ship roughly double in size to my current one by spreading out the cores to cover areas that aren't supported by the central engine, and I have plenty of grav light panels left over from all my previous looting, so there's no reason to not go ham here. Grav cores can only be placed within the effect radius of the grav engine, and they have an effect radius of 17 blocks themselves, so there are limits to how big of a ship I can make, but in practice, just about any tile within 35 blocks of the central grav engine is fair game, which allows for a lot of flexibility in design. Admittedly, the hordes of megasloths with a clinical case of man-munchies does make expansion somewhat difficult, as did the absolute scam that was this map's supposed plasteel-rich nature. 5 ore tiles is not rich, for the record. I would say that it barely even qualifies as present at this point. After a few weeks of work, the outer structure and defensive hardpoints on the ship have mostly been finished, just in time for another psychic droner to crash land right in the middle of the map that has the scanner I'm supposed to be defending to get my second fuel efficiency upgrade. The ship design isn't finalized yet, and just to name one obvious example, the space I have dedicated to solar panels can probably go away if I ever switch over to grav core power, but it's good enough to do the job for now. As for the psychic droner, strictly speaking I don't have to take it out, but the drone is gonna bother people. It landed right next to my rice field, which I would really like to harvest and eat at some point, and I'm bored, so it seemed like a fun thing to do with my free time. Turns out I didn't even need to do much to get rid of it, because the way the mech pod tethered is weirdly forgiving in regards to aggro range, and all I had to do is sit a couple of snipers in a sweet spot where they can shoot the mechs, but the mechs don't bother to return fire and then run the game at max speed. I don't know what the goal of the mechs was exactly, but I won't complain, it was an easy win. If it's true that there's no rest for the wicked, my colonists must all be terrible people who have no sense of work-life balance, because immediately after I finish cleaning up the mess left behind from defending the scanner, I depart on yet another grav core collection mission to some orbital platform nearby. This is an assassination mission, apparently, though in the précis of the mission it mentioned that the person who I'm supposed to assass all over may be in the company of space pirates, which in my mind turns us from an assassination mission to an extermination one, complete with gratuitous uber-violence, a really weird shoehorned-in love interest subplot, and far too much Arnold Schwarzenegger for anyone to enjoy, but not so much that anyone actually complains about it. Once every previously known as hostile thing on the station is occupying in a structural state shockingly similar to what you get when you stick a live grenade in a bottle of ketchup, I grab my gravcorp, do some scrapping, and then away we go. No issues to be found here. Speaking of which, while we were up here looting the place to the ground, my space object scanners, which are passive, by the way, you'll love to see it, detected some sort of satellite-looking thing that's new, and I wanted to check out. Now, I went into this thinking that it was going to be a nothing burger of a raid, so, you know, show up, shoot a couple drones, maybe have Brick eat a hunter or two for breakfast, the usual. I was very, very wrong in this assessment, and it was immediately apparent when the first thing I had to do out of the breach was take out a uranium slug turret that was camping my door. These suckers are mech killers, which means they're also going to be very good at killing my pawns, and Brick can only take one shot on his shield before it goes down, so yikes. Thankfully, humans are a lot smaller than mechs, and the turrets are next to useless at close range, so we don't have too many issues there, but still, getting these things down was spooky. And then we get inside the place, and as near as I can tell, the whole area is basically rigged to explode at the drop of a hat. There are sentry robots everywhere, hunter drones everywhere that sentry bots aren't, and when those two aren't enough, explosive power nodes are littering the space between. Progress is slow-going, dearly won, and carries with it an actual risk of failure and loss, and I loved every moment of it. Shame all of the other ruins can't be like this. Though, Shy did lose a kidney. Probably should keep an eye out for a donor. Sorry, Shy, we'll get you patched up at some point. For all my efforts, I am awarded with a fuel optimizer and a decent handful of steel and components from all the random everything that I had to bushwhack my way through to get it. The fuel optimizer, despite not really being worth anything to me, is still interesting on an object level, though, since it implies that you can find ship parts, and that makes me wonder if you can get grav cores out of these chests as well. I don't need any more ship size upgrades, but the cores are also good things for building an I can't believe it's not a vanometric power cell structure, and I would love to use the space my solar panels are taking up for other things at some point. Now that I don't have any time-sensitive missions demanding my attention, I can afford to have my pawns sit back and finish up their home improvement projects. Fancy bedrooms are a must for everyone except Onyx, and while I don't have any decent artists on my ship, I can still build out larger spaces with better quality furniture and fine flooring, which still goes a long way to improving their mood. The rec room and machine shop is in much the same situation, though in the case of the machine shop, simply having only machining equipment in a room gives me a 20% production speed increase, which is very much needed. As much as possible, I want my pawns in excellent or greater quality marine armor, and that requirement means a good half of the equipment I've been producing is only good for selling to other factions, which drives up the time to repair and resupply my pawns substantially. The kitchen and storage areas will come in a bit because their biggest requirements are just open space, and as I shuffle things around, more of that's going to show up. The whole mess does eventually work itself out, and lacking anything more productive to do with my time, I decide to stick my nose in a gold-rich asteroid my scanners picked up a while back. While yes, I can confirm that it does indeed have gold in it, calling it rich is a bit of a stretch. If you have a good researcher, you are honestly better off just scanning for gold chunks on the planet's surface and mining those instead. I did, however, find something interesting hidden inside of it, which was a thing I had no idea could happen. Inside of this mystery room was a random dude named Blair, who had no vacuum protection and probably would have died before I could get him back to the ship even if I did want him, but still. Neat. Buried treasure. I love it. Alright then. Enough faffing around for now. That is, contrary to the implied game loop of the DLC, there is actually a story quest that you're supposed to complete, kind of. I've been sort of working on it, which is where most of my grav cores came from, but until now I haven't really cared to finish it, and I think it's time to change that. Next on my list of locations to visit is a broken terraformer near the North Pole, which is apparently malfunctioning and making the whole area very cold. Not that you could tell, what with it being the North Pole and all. Seriously, my freezer is colder than this. Passively. Get with the program. All of this is overshadowed, of course, by Shy Grant having a creative inspiration and finally giving me the legendary obsidian longsword I've been waiting all these years for. It is everything I could have asked for. The slashing and stabbing attacks do 53 damage each, and have an 80% armor penetration value. Both of these are utterly ridiculous numbers by the standards of the base game, and as far as I can see, the only drawback to using obsidian for longswords is that they only have 50 points of durability due to being made out of a very fragile volcanic rock. which mysteriously doesn't seem to cause any problems when you use it to beat up tanks, but sure. As long as you take care of the weapon, though, this will never be a problem. So, have fun, Brick. This thing only took like 4 years to make, so I expect mountains of centipedes as compensation, okay? Okay. Finding the terraformer here ended up being unexpectedly easy, since it was literally the first room I checked. Cool. Okay then. Next mission. Crashed mech site? No problems. Heavy mech presence? Yeah, you weren't kidding. Methinks we need to recalibrate your definition of the word heavy, because sometimes it means nothing and sometimes it means this. I think I was spot on in my initial assessment regarding the beam repeaters being anti-player weapons, too. They are not all that great DPS-wise, and there are far better options for your pawns, but when you get 10 or 20 disposable mechs using high armor penetration, shield-penetrating weapons, they end up being a surprisingly effective counter to most of the conventional tank and spank tactics that would otherwise let you steamroll the late game. While I'm here, I also discovered that yes, you can get grav cores out of those fancy 2x2 metal boxes I was talking about earlier, because the one I found at the bottom of the facility wasn't the one the quest was talking about. It was referring to the crashed grav engine structure up top, which I also stole, of course. Getting more grav cores is nice and all, but we are very quickly hitting diminishing returns on the things, since the only scalable upgrade I can use them for is making power cells, and I can only make so many of those before I'm just overproducing power for no reason. Diminishing returns has never stopped me before, though, and I don't intend to let it stop me again, so let's hit up another mech relay for another one, shall we? This is the same setup as the one we dealt with in the second episode, where there are 3 sleeping pods of mechs that we have to sweep up, and then we hack something, crash some things, and have to take out a 4th respawning mech force. It honestly reads like an XCOM mission at Rimworld, and I'm pretty okay with that. I also got yet another grav core mission from my grav engine's passive scanning, also known as a quest line that fires whenever you beat one, which honestly makes me wonder how many of these things the game will give me, because I have definitely gotten way more grav cores than any sane person would ever need. If memory serves, the end of this quest line is one of the new endings added by the DLC, so there is surely only so many subquests, but this one is kind of starting to transition from fun treasure hunting to I can't believe it's not an MMO levels of seek and destroy. I end up departing sooner than planned from this mission thanks to a lava flow coming in off the map and making a beeline directly towards my landing site, but not before securing the grav core, the now largely superfluous grav light panels, and most of the mech corpses from the various defensive raids I received in response to existing. I'd hoped to stick around a bit and watch the lava come in and kind of get a feel for how it works because it's new and cool, but a bunch of raiders also popped up and expedited my departure, so no fun with spicy hot rock juice for Goose, I guess. My next destination is another crashed mech platform to the south, claiming to contain yet another flipping grav core. Please, literally any other loot, I beg you. So much for these things being rare. I gotta say, if the mechs pilot this bad, it's a wonder that they're still around, honestly, because by my math, that's 2 orbital installations they have dropped out of the sky for no reason within the same year, with who knows what else is happening behind the scenes. We do have something funny happen, though, and that's apparently the local friendly population of flesh nuggets is likewise confused and irritated by the incredibly terrible driving practices of the mech colonies nearby, because I get an enormous amount of friendly reinforcements when cleaning out the down station. They aren't really all that helpful since they don't aggro on things that aren't pathable and active, but what I can do with them is explore rooms and then yell really loudly or pass wind or something to tick the mechs off and then run away and make the friendlies deal with them, so good enough. The last destination in the grav ship questline is an orbital mech hive located above the North Pole. The quest describes this as the center of all mech operations on the planet, and that, combined with the chunky loading time, definitely signals endgame content to me. And having seen the map layout, yeah, definitely endgame material here. The basic goal, as stated, is a variant of the hack the transmitters to expose the final boss mechanic, but instead of a few incidental pods of sleeping mechs, the entire area is layered with the worst designed static turn emplacements I've ever seen in my life, surrounded by active pods of mechs. I don't even get 5 steps outside my farm box before I am immediately forced to pull back and welcome in 3 angry blender door prizes, and I have to secure the area before doing much else. If I know one thing about these sort of missions, it's that you never leave unkilled enemies in your line of retreat, so the first thing I do before exploring anything is wander around and obliterate all of the exposed presences on the map. For all that the map looked imposing initially, there really aren't that many. Each turret emplacement only had a couple of mechs tied to it, and mini slugger turrets are more intended for area denial than actively repulsing raiders, so they can't really do all that much damage as long as you take them out quickly. With the outskirts taken care of, I opt to try and secure the middle of the map, which takes a bit. There are 4 mech birthing structures that have been slowly building a mech presence around the wingding that I'm supposed to be laying siege to, and while infinite mech spawn seems like something I could exploit the living daylights out of in any other context, right now it's mostly annoying, and I don't want to have to deal with it. To this end, I apply the usual strategy of overwhelming firepower to blast a nice long firing angle open, and then sit Shygrant, my level 20 shooting double Architect eyeballed pawn on that angle with a legendary sniper rifle and tell her to have fun for a bit. And believe you me, she is having the time of her life right now. I don't think I have ever had a pawn that was this happy naturally as a result of just existing. That is, she's happy until the mechs make a fatal mistake and do a full send push out of their fortified position into my fortified position while heavily wounded and missing 3/4 of their forces. Given that my ship is explicitly designed to take out mech raids 10 times the size, the forces that they sent stand literally zero chance of doing anything other than scuffing my paint jobs, and they are obliterated summarily. The resulting counterpush is swift and brutal. Or it would be, if I'd realized that the mech production facilities, or it would have been, if the mech production facilities weren't immortal. Yeah, turns out we can't actually take them out, they're just gonna live there forever. Whoopsies! At the very least, I cleared all the turrets out, I guess, so yay? Accessibility features? So that was a waste of time, mostly, and I don't feel like constantly keeping a force in the middle of the map to clear the mechs out, so I guess I'd just blitz the sub-objectives. Knock knock, it's me, come to hack your sensors and steal your steel. When you go to sleep at night, I want a starring role in your nightmares, and I'm willing to put in the legwork needed to happen. Anyone interested? Oh, wow. Okay, look, I found one. Cool. That is a lot of mechs. They were not kidding when they said extremely high mech presence for once. Dang. Also, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, destroying the things I'm supposed to destroy prompts a hostile mech response. Wowee, what a shocker. Several minutes of high-intensity door peeking later, and I clean them up, though I have learned a new hatred for those stupid beam launcher mechs, who are problematically accurate despite having basically just an electric minigun, and whose armor-penetrating effects have no effective defense. Seriously, I thought meme lancing was an annoying mechanic, but no, it just got twice as bad, because these you can't even really deal with unless you want to snipe them instantly. I've also learned that the real challenge here is very quickly going to become inventory management, because the number of mech corpses that are piling up around the place is starting to present serious tactical challenges, by which I mean I can't tell which mechs are alive and which mechs are just scrap. And also, mechs can now attack structures through the corners of walls. This seems unintentional, but maybe they just missed it in the first patch, who knows. Either way, I lost a couple of solar panels and nobody noticed or cared. Despite these annoyances, after hanging out here for a while, I've become quite impressed with how this map plays out. The problem I'm running into, principally, is one of sustained aggression. Those mech-producing structures make mechs at a rate of 2 or 3 a day without any respite, and once the balls get large enough, they will stage an attack that I have to fight off. In order to maintain map control, then I have to be constantly culling this herd while also making progress on other objectives, which is a tricky balancing game since I have so few colonists and I cannot risk sustaining major injuries for fear of not being able to go back and defend my ship. This slows me down more and puts pressure on otherwise unrelated things like my food supply, hence why I am now installing hydroponic systems made entirely out of the corpses of my defeated enemies. I may play games stupidly, but I generally do not play stupid games, regardless of how interesting the prizes are, and as such, I opt to not directly rush for the second stabilizer I found, in favor of cracking a hole in the wall and sniping the mechs guarding it from a fortified position. This strategy doesn't quite work, and a few run around and try and flank me, but that's what armor is for, and the strategy seems sound enough to repeat as long as I remember to block the exits off first. In that same vein, I also pop the stabilizer from a distance with my pawns already in their killbox positions, which does wonders for things like response time. Weird pathing jank very nearly flubs the whole run on the third stabilizer, as one of my pawns arbitrarily decides to wander through an undiscovered room that is very obviously going to be full of hostile mechs, rather than taking the slightly longer but perfectly safe hallway around the side corridor that I'm trying to push. In any other colony, this would have probably resulted in some fatalities, but I have been constantly fighting mechs for almost half a year straight in-game, and it's to the point where literally every colonist in my colony, with any passion for fighting whatsoever, is at level 20 in their chosen weapon. And that level of combat prowess lets you get away with a whole lot of things you really shouldn't be able to, positioning-wise. Despite this mistake resulting in a two-front battle with our backs against the wall, coordinated high-damage accurate fire carves us some space to work, nearly universal excellent or quality higher marine armor keeps us alive, and the stupid amount of DPS my pawns can bring to bear is enough to obliterate anything that comes near us. We make it out of this fight with 0 lasting damage. It's absurd. These pawns are fighting better than colonies I've had twice their size, and it is utterly broken. Rather than break down the last stabilizer, I opted to do another sweep of the map to check any other hidden areas just in case there was something I needed to take out. There wasn't, really, and the only major areas was around the central hive mind that was just full of weird corridors that I guess are supposed to be flanking positions or something. I'm not entirely certain of why these are here. Someone still has to take out the final stabilizer though, and that someone gets to be Brick. Melee combat is excellent in tight corridors where shield belts and limited axes force things to fight you one at a time, but it is useless in all of my farm box designs, and Brick has been doing basically nothing but being a cheerleader every time we have to use mine. Turns out I needn't have worried. The mechs spawn on the literal opposite corner of the map from my ship, and take so long to get to the farm box that Brick can casually stroll all the way back and get inside before the first wave hits. They, as with so many before, get turned into linoleum and mopped like the floor. Mechs do not scare me anymore, not with this colony. Just in case of chicanery, I clean out and repair the farm box before pushing in to look at the core, but there turns out to not be any, and I just have Goose punch the core and it's finally over. Interestingly enough, this doesn't actually destroy the mechanoid faction, per se, which is what I thought would initially happen. Instead, they will still show up in events that require mechs, but all of their hostile structures will have the deactivated state, which lets you walk up to them and finish them off or smash them without any combat whatsoever, which is an interesting workaround, since otherwise a lot of the quests would have broken. This does beg the obvious question of what happens if you destroy all hostile humanoid factions on the map as well, because without mechs, I'm fairly certain the only active hazards that can then fire are things like insects and world events, but I think that is a question I will leave for a future series. I have deeply enjoyed Odyssey, and will almost certainly be working it into future Rimworld runs, but for now, I think that will be all. As always, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed.